The door slammed shut, the sound ricocheting like a gunshot in the cramped, dimly lit room. I stumbled forward, my wrists still raw from the zip ties they'd cut just moments ago, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. They said he was a monster, Jackson Creed, the man who ran this city's underbelly with an iron fist, but when my eyes met his, I didn't see a beast. I saw a storm. I was nobody, just Elias Carter, a 24-year-old barista scraping by in Seattle's rain-soaked streets, until I saw something I shouldn't have. A deal gone wrong in the back alley behind my coffee shop. Guns, blood, and a man left crumpled in the shadows. I didn't know the name of the guy who died, but I knew the faces of the men who did it. And suddenly, I was a loose end. They came for me at midnight, black SUVs screeching into my apartment complex. And before I could scream, I was here, thrown into Jackson Creed's penthouse like a lamb to slaughter. He was leaning against the window when I stumbled in, his silhouette sharp against the city's neon glow. Jackson was everything they said: tall, broad-shouldered, with ink-black hair falling into piercing gray eyes that seemed to see through me. But there was something else, something haunted in the way he moved, like he carried the weight of every deal, every life he'd taken. Sit, he said, voice low, almost soft, gesturing to a leather couch that probably cost more than my rent. I obeyed, not because I wanted to, but because my legs were shaking too hard to stand. You saw something you shouldn't have, he said, crossing the room with a predator's grace. I braced myself, expecting threats, maybe worse. Instead, he crouched in front of me, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of his cologne. I'm not going to hurt you, Elias, he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he'd known me forever. His hand brushed my knee, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me. Not fear, but something warmer, something dangerous. I didn't trust it. I couldn't. Everyone in Seattle knew Jackson Creed didn't do mercy. He was the man who could make people disappear with a phone call, who built his empire on blood and secrets. Yet here he was, offering me water from a crystal glass, his gaze lingering like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Why am I here? I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt. Because you're a problem, he said, but there was no venom in it. He stood, pacing to the window, the city sprawling below like a chessboard he controlled. You saw my brother's mess. Marcus is sloppy, always has been. I don't like cleaning up after him, but I don't have a choice. His voice was bitter, and I caught a glimpse of something raw, something human. Jackson wasn't just a kingpin. He was a man trapped by family, by loyalty, by a life he hadn't chosen. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Not entirely. There was a pull between us, like a current I couldn't name. Maybe it was the adrenaline, the fear, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. What do you want from me? I asked, my throat tight. He turned, his expression unreadable. I want you to forget what you saw. And I want you to stay close until I know you will. It wasn't a request. It was a command. But the way he said it, the way his hand lingered near mine, felt less like a threat and more like a plea. The next few days were a blur of tension and something else I couldn't admit to myself. Jackson didn't lock me in a dungeon or chain me to a radiator. He gave me a room in his penthouse, a space with soft sheets and a view of the Puget Sound that made my old apartment look like a closet. He'd come by at odd hours, bringing takeout from places I'd never afford, asking me about my life like he cared. I told him about growing up in foster homes, about the coffee shop job I hated but needed, about the sketches I drew in secret when the world felt too heavy. He listened, really listened, and I hated how it made me feel seen, wanted, alive. But I wasn't stupid. I knew who he was. I'd heard the stories, Jackson Creed, the man who'd burned down a rival's warehouse without blinking, who'd walked away from deals that left bodies in the street. Yet when he sat across from me at his sleek dining table, sharing Thai curry and a bottle of wine, he didn't feel like a villain. He felt like a man who'd been shaped by a world that didn't give him a choice. One night, rain hammering the windows, he found my sketchbook. I'd drawn the alley, the scene I wasn't supposed to see, but also him, his sharp jawline, the weight in his eyes. He didn't yell or tear it up. He just stared at the page, then at me, his voice barely above a whisper. "You see me differently," he said, and I couldn't tell if it was a question or a confession. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to run. But every time he brushed past me, every time his hand grazed mine, I felt something shift. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something reckless, something that made my pulse race when he stood too close. I was a nobody, a witness who should have been dead. But when Jackson looked at me, I felt like I was already his. By the end of the first week, I was less a prisoner and more a guest who couldn't leave. Jackson's world was a maze of late-night phone calls, coded conversations, and men in suits who eyed me like I was a liability. His brother, Marcus, was the worst blonde, brash, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He'd corner me in the hallway, hissing that I was trouble, that Jackson was too soft on me. "You're lucky he likes you," Marcus spat once, and I wondered what he saw that I didn't. Jackson was different when Marcus wasn't around. He'd tell me about growing up in Tacoma, about a father who taught him to fight before he could read, about a mother who left when he was 10. "This life fight's not what I wanted," he said one night, the city lights casting shadows across his face. "But it's what I got." I didn't know what to say, so I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. The tension between us grew, a thread pulled tighter each day. One evening, after a meeting that left him pacing like a caged animal, he stopped in front of me, his breath uneven. "Why don't you hate me?" he asked, his voice raw. I didn't have an answer, not one I could say out loud. Instead, I stood, closing the distance between us, my hand brushing his arm. He froze, then pulled me close, his grip firm but not cruel, like he was afraid I'd vanish. "I don't know what this is," he murmured, his forehead resting against mine. "But I can't let you go." I should have pushed him away. I should have remembered who he was. But in that moment, with the rain outside and his heartbeat under my palm, I didn't care. I kissed him, and the world fell away. That kiss changed everything. It wasn't just a moment. It was a line crossed, a door flung open that neither of us could close. Jackson's lips were warm, desperate, like he'd been starving for something he didn't know he needed. My hands found his hair, tugging him closer, and for a few seconds, the world wasn't Seattle's gritty underworld, it was just us. Two broken pieces fitting together in a way that shouldn't have made sense. But sense didn't matter in Jackson's penthouse, where every corner held secrets and every glance held weight. After that night, he stopped treating me like a problem to be managed. He'd find excuses to be near me, bringing coffee to my room, asking about my sketches, even showing me the rooftop garden he kept hidden from his men. It was a small patch of green in a concrete jungle, with roses he tended himself, a side of Jackson Creed no one else got to see. "My mom loved flowers," he said once, clipping a thorn with a tenderness that made my chest ache. "This is all I've got left of her." I was falling, and I knew it. Falling for a man who could ruin me with a word, who carried a gun under his jacket and a past full of ghosts. But when he smiled, rare, fleeting, like sunlight breaking through clouds, I couldn't help myself. I started sketching him everywhere, in my notebook, on napkins, on the margins of takeout menus. His eyes, his hands, the way he looked when he thought no one was watching. He caught me once, mid-drawing, and instead of getting mad, he kissed me again, slower this time, like he was memorizing me. The outside world didn't let us forget, though. Marcus was a constant shadow, his presence like a blade at my back. He'd barge into the penthouse unannounced, his voice loud and his eyes cold. "You're keeping him too long, Jax," he'd say, glaring at me like I was a stain on his perfect plans. I overheard him on the phone once, arguing about the witness and cleaning up loose ends. My stomach twisted, but Jackson was always thereafter, his hand on my shoulder, his voice steady. "I won't let him touch you," he promised, and I believed him, even when I shouldn't have. Other threats loomed too. Jackson's empire wasn't built on kindness. It was built on deals, debts, and enemies who didn't forgive. One night, a rival crew shot up one of his warehouses, and he came back with blood on his shirt, not his. But it didn't matter. He was shaking when he pulled me into his arms, his grip tight, like I was the only thing keeping him grounded. "I can't lose you," he said, and I realized I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was his weakness. I started to see the cracks in his world. The men who worked for him loyal but ruthless didn't trust me. They whispered when I passed, called me the barista like it was a slur. One of them, a guy named Vince with a scar across his cheek, cornered me in the garage. "You think you're special," he sneered. "Jackson's just playing with you. He doesn't keep strays." I wanted to punch him, but I walked away, because proving him wrong meant admitting how much Jackson meant to me. We stole moments where we could. A late-night drive to the coast, the ocean roaring under a starless sky, where Jackson told me about the first time he held a gun, how his hands shook until his father slapped him. A quiet morning in the penthouse, sharing pancakes while he laughed at my terrible cooking. Every touch, every glance, was a rebellion against the life he was trapped in. I started to dream of something else, a life where we weren't running from his past, where I wasn't a secret he had to protect. But dreams don't survive in a world like his. 2 weeks in, I found a burner phone hidden in my room, left by someone who wanted me gone. There was a single text: "Tell the cops or you're both dead." My hands shook as I deleted it, but the fear stayed. Someone knew about us, knew what I meant to Jackson, and they were watching. I didn't tell him. I couldn't. He was already carrying too much. Instead, I pushed closer, kissed him harder, like I could drown out the threat. One night, in the rooftop garden, with the city humming below, I told him I loved him. The words slipped out, raw and reckless, and for a moment, he just stared, his eyes wide like I'd handed him something fragile. "Elias," he said, voice breaking, "you don't know what you're saying." But he pulled me close, his lips on mine, and I knew he felt it too. The tension broke one rainy afternoon. Jackson was out, handling a deal, and I was alone in the penthouse when Marcus showed up. He didn't knock, just stormed in, his face twisted with rage. "You're tearing him apart," he spat, grabbing my arm hard enough to bruise. "He's risking everything for you, and nobody who saw too much." I yanked free, my heart racing, but he wasn't done. "You think this ends happy? You're a liability, and I clean up liabilities." He left me shaking, but I didn't break. When Jackson came back, I didn't tell him about Marcus. I just kissed him, pulling him to the couch, needing to feel him, to know this was real. But the burner phone's threat echoed in my head, and I knew our time was running out. The burner phone was just the beginning. The threats came faster after that note slipped under the door. Cryptic voicemails on Jackson's private line. Even a photo of us in the rooftop garden. My face circled in red. Someone was closing in, and I knew it wasn't just about what I'd seen in the alley anymore. It was about me and Jackson, about what we'd become to each other. Love in his world wasn't a gift. It was a target. I tried to keep it from him, but Jackson was too sharp, He found the photo in my sketchbook, tucked between drawings of him. "Who sent this?" he demanded, his voice like steel, but his hands were gentle when they cupped my face. I told him everything: the phone, the texts, Marcus's threats. His jaw tightened, but he didn't yell. He just pulled me close, his arms a shield against the world. "I'll handle it," he said, but I saw the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for me. Jackson went into overdrive. He doubled security, had his men sweep the penthouse for bugs, even moved me to a safe house in Bellevue for a few nights. It was a sterile condo with no personality. Nothing like the penthouse where we'd built something fragile and real. He'd visit after midnight, slipping in quietly, his face drawn from meetings with men I never saw. "I'm trying to find who's behind this," he'd say, his voice heavy. "But you need to stay hidden." I hated it being a burden, hated the distance it put between us, but I stayed, because I trusted him. One night, he showed up with a split lip and a bruise blooming across his cheek. "Marcus," he said, before I could ask. "He thinks you're a trap, that someone's using you to get to me." I wanted to argue, to say I'd never betray him, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I cleaned his lip with a damp cloth, my hand shaking, and he kissed my fingers like they were something sacred. "I don't deserve you," he whispered, and I hated how much he believed it. The safe house didn't stay safe. A week in, I woke to the sound of glass shattering. Two men in black masks were in the living room, moving like shadows. I grabbed the knife Jackson had left under the pillow and hid in the closet, my heart pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. They didn't find me, but they left a message spray-painted on the wall: "He's next." I called Jackson, my voice barely steady, and he was there in 20 minutes, his face pale as he pulled me into his arms. "I'm done hiding you," he said. "We end this now." He took me back to the penthouse, but it wasn't the same. The warmth was gone, replaced by plans and paranoia. Jackson's men were on edge, and I caught glimpses of guns, maps, lists of names I didn't know. He told me the threats were coming from a rival, Victor Kane, a man who'd lost half his crew to Jackson's deals years ago. Kane wanted blood, and I was the easiest way to get it. But Jackson wasn't planning to let him win. "I'm going to meet him," he said one night, loading a clip into his gun. "And you're coming with me." I thought he was crazy, but he wasn't. "They want you scared," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "We show them you're not." It was reckless, dangerous, but it was Jackson always playing the game one step ahead. I nodded, because I'd follow him anywhere, even into a lion's den. The meeting was set in an abandoned warehouse by the docks, the kind of place where deals went bad and bodies got buried. Jackson's hand was steady on my back as we walked in, flanked by his men. Kane was waiting, a wiry man with a scar across his throat and eyes like a snake's. "You brought your pet," he sneered, but Jackson didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his voice calm but deadly. "You touch him, you die." Simple as that. The air was thick with tension, every word a spark that could ignite the room. Kane wanted territory, money, Jackson's head. Jackson offered a truce part of his turf for my safety. I wanted to scream, to tell him I wasn't worth it, but he squeezed my hand, silencing me. The deal was struck, but I saw the way Kane's men looked at me, like they were already planning the next move. That night, back in the penthouse, Jackson didn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring at the city, his gun on the table. I wrapped my arms around him, my cheek against his back, and whispered, "We'll get through this." He didn't answer, but his hand found mine, holding tight like I was his lifeline. The truce didn't hold. I knew it wouldn't, not with men like Kane who thrived on betrayal. 2 days after the warehouse. Jackson's phone buzzed with a single message: "Your boy's dead." He smashed the phone against the wall, his face a mask of rage and fear. But I was still there, still breathing, standing right behind him. "They're trying to break me," he said, his voice raw. "They know you're my heart." We didn't have time to process it. An explosion rocked the south side of the city, one of Jackson's safe houses, gone in a blaze of fire and smoke. Kane wasn't playing games anymore. Jackson's men rallied, but Marcus was nowhere to be found, and I saw the betrayal in Jackson's eyes before he said it. "He sold us out," he whispered, and I knew he meant his brother. Marcus had always hated me, hated what I meant to Jackson, and now he'd picked his side. We went on the run. Not far, just a cabin in the Cascades, a place Jackson said no one knew about. It was small, wood-paneled, with a fireplace and a view of pines stretching into the mist. For the first time, it was just us. No guards, no threats, no empire. We cooked canned soup on a rickety stove, laughed about nothing, made love on a creaky bed that felt like freedom. "I could stay here forever," I said, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. He kissed my forehead, but his silence told me he didn't believe in forever. He was planning something. I could tell by the way he'd stare at his phone, the way he'd step outside to take calls I couldn't hear. "I'm ending this," he said one morning, his jaw set. "Kane, Marcus, all of it. You deserve better than this life." I wanted to argue, to say I just wanted him, but he was already moving, already slipping back into the man they called Ruthless. The plan was simple and brutal. Jackson lured Marcus and Kane to a meet under the pretense of surrender. It was a trap, set in an old factory on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one would hear the fallout. I begged to go with him, but he refused, his hands framing my face. "You're the reason I'm doing this," he said, kissing me like it was the last time. "Stay here. Stay safe." I didn't listen. I followed, hiding in the shadows of the factory, my heart in my throat. It went wrong fast. Marcus showed up first, shouting about loyalty, about family, but Jackson didn't waver. "You betrayed me," he said, his voice cold, and I saw the gun in his hand. Before he could fire, Kane's men swarmed in, a double cross. Shots rang out, and I ran toward Jackson, screaming his name. He turned, saw me, and took a bullet meant for me, his body crumpling to the concrete. I don't remember much after that, just blood, his blood, on my hands as I held him, begging him to stay. Marcus was gone, Kane's men scattered, and Jackson's crew arrived too late. He looked at me, his eyes fading but still his, and whispered, "You were worth it." I kissed him, tears mixing with blood, and promised I'd never forget him. Jackson didn't die that night. He was too stubborn, too fierce, even for a bullet. The hospital was a blur of white walls and beeping machines, but he pulled through, weaker but alive. I stayed by his side, sketching him in the hospital bed, his hand in mine. Marcus disappeared. Kane's crew fell apart without him, and Jackson's empire shifted to men he trusted. He was done with that life, he said, and I believed him. We left Seattle when he was strong enough, driving south to a small town in Oregon where no one knew his name. We bought a house with a garden, planted roses like his mother's, and lived quietly, fiercely, together. The world still whispered about Jackson Creed, the ruthless man who'd burned bright and fallen hard. But I knew the truth. He was mine, and I was his, and that was worth every scar.